Hi everybody, so today I wanted to make a video for you about how to improve your vocabulary. This might seem random to some of my new viewers, but apparently I've gained somewhat of a reputation on YouTube for being eloquent and well spoken, and for my so say impressive lexicon. And I basically thought I would take this opportunity to kind of advise you on how you can go about improving your own vocabulary. So here we are. I think the first thing that I should say in how to improve your vocab is read dictionaries, basically. Don't just stick to one dictionary either. I would say that my favourite dictionary is this one, which is the Oxford Dictionary of English. It's a concise version because I think there are at least 10 volumes of this thing. But this one is extremely good. It's not the dictionary I grew up on, but it's really good. I think I read my first dictionary back to back when I was 13, and I know this sounds really bizarre and actually really quite nerdy, but I wrote down every single word and the meaning of it, from A to about R, I think I got to. So if I didn't know the word, I would write it down and write the meaning of it down. And I basically made my own dictionary back then of words I didn't know, and I would learn them. I would look at them every day and basically just teach myself the meanings of them. The reason I only got up to R was because after that I was just so exhausted of it, and I found it to be a very challenging procedure. So I stopped at that point. But that experience at the age of 13, I think it was, really taught me a lot of words, and I must say that I'm very grateful for the process, because I'm sure that really started off my hunger for learning words and, you know, my general love of the English language. I think my second tip would be do not rely on thesauruses. I know that at primary school and a lot of time in secondary school actually, teachers will suggest that you read or pick up a thesaurus if you don't want to use a more common word, really. I know that on Microsoft Word, if you right click on a word, most cases, it will offer you a synonym choice at probably the last option. I really wouldn't recommend this. I have proofread a lot of essays in my time, and it has been glaringly obvious where students have opted to use one of Microsoft Word's own synonyms in the place of one of their own words. And the problem with this is that students who aren't familiar with the words used in this synonym section end up using words out of context, and that is the quickest and easiest way to make your essay seem as contrived and bizarre and lacking flow as you could possibly wish to make it. It's really not very slick, actually, to rely on words in thesauruses, because you need to learn the meanings of words and how they can be appropriately and correctly used in the apposite context. I must say that, I don't know, I was probably about 11 or 12, and this is a mistake I made, actually. I mean, I would look at thesauruses. This is before I was seasoned into dictionaries, and I thought thesauruses were, the one-stop shop for, quick word hunting and to find impressive words quickly and the like, but no, it's not a very thorough way of improving your vocabulary. And the synonyms offered in, Microsoft Word and things like that, they do not often mean exactly what you wanted them to mean. So say that you were writing a sentence of the man's body was attractive. If you right click on body in that sentence, the synonym it might offer you is the word cadaver. To the unknowing mind, who doesn't know what the word cadaver means and believes Microsoft Word when it merely means body, that person will not realise that cadaver means a dead body. I must admit, this is a mistake I made at the age of 11 and was quickly reminded of it by my English teacher at the time. So yeah, don't rely on thesauruses and synonym finders on Microsoft Word, because they're not very educational, frankly, and you'd be much better off reading a dictionary, if anything. Another point I would make is that don't just rely on reading dictionaries. I mean, that just seems contrived in itself, really, doesn't it? But read improving literature, and by that I mean read the classics, and as much sort of philosophy as you can. History is very good. Even non-fiction's very good for this sort of thing, like science literature or psychology is very good. I can thoroughly recommend the non-fiction books of Professor Paul Bloom from Yale University, Professor of Psychology, and Nigel Warburton, who is the producer of Philosophy Bites. I can recommend those non-fiction writers to you. I can also recommend who I believe to be the best fiction writers of all time. I would definitely say those have to be James Joyce, author of Ulysses and The Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man, Charlotte Bronte, who is probably top 3 favourite authors of all time. Absolutely loved Charlotte Bronte's Jane Eyre and Villette and The Professor, most wonderful novels. And you know, if you really want to improve your vocabulary, I can guarantee that if you read Charlotte Bronte's novels, literally on every page, nay, on every second line, you will find a word that you do not know the meaning of. And reading Charlotte Bronte is like a task in, you know, visiting a dictionary, because honestly, if you're that conscientious, you will be visiting your dictionary every 5 minutes probably. You know, if you really are interested in improving your vocabulary, you know, if you're reading something and you don't know the meaning of a word, don't just pass it by. Seriously, go look it up. I mean, how can you seriously understand what you're reading? And especially if you're trying to study the novel, you know, or poem or drama text, if you are not even investigating the meanings of words that you don't know already, you know, how else are you going to learn more, and how are you going to expand your vocabulary if you're just, you know, batting an eyelid to words that aren't yet in your vocabulary? I have always been very conscientious like this, and I would keep a piece of paper. You know, I'd have my bookmark would be, you know, a continual list of words I didn't know, and at the end of that reading session I would go and look them up, or if I was so inclined at the time I would look them up instantly, because I would want to. I think another author that you can always rely on for improvement of one's lexicon is obviously Charles Dickens. He writes absolutely phenomenally, and I defy you not to find many new words in his novels. I mean, he coined a lot of his own words. That's called a neologism. And yeah, so those are 3 authors that I would kind of encourage you to read if you are looking for, you know, vocabulary improvement. I think there are other ways to improve your vocabulary. The first method is to learn a foreign language, actually. I can definitely recommend, you know, for the improvement of your English, it's good to read Latin, and it's good to read French and German, because English has a lot of Latinate words and a lot of Anglo-Saxon words which find their origin in sort of Germanic languages. I don't know how many of you are interested in etymology, which means where the words come from, like the history of the word. So, you know, I think if you know enough Latin, actually, it will really help you in your French writing, because French is a Latinate language, and after you know a fair bit of Latin and a fair bit of French and a bit of German, you can actually kind of merge these languages, and if you come across a different word in English, a new word that you haven't seen before, you might even be able to work it out because you know Latin or because you know French. There are so many examples of this. I can't even think of one right now because there are just too many, but occasionally you can find words, you chance upon a word you've never seen before or that you've never heard used before, but because you know where it derives from, its derivatives, you can really kind of make a logical guess really what it might mean. So I would say that's a good idea. Other ways to improve your vocabulary would be to listen to academic podcasts and to watch academic lectures. I can definitely recommend Philosophy Bites, which you can find on iTunes. It's basically a series of interviews with philosophers, and it's conducted by Nigel Warburton and David Edmonds. They are very prominent philosophers of to now, so hi David and Nigel, I think you're wonderful. If you're interested in listening to academics, you can be pretty sure that they're going to know a heck of a load of stuff, and their vocabulary is going to be pretty awesome actually. And not just their vocabulary, but their way of speaking. If you're listening to people talking about philosophy or any kind of arts subject or social science, the people who are talking about it, their aim is to convey very clearly the topic they're trying to talk about. That wasn't very well said of me, but if you're trying to explain something, you need to have a concise vocabulary to discuss it with, if you know what I mean. Sorry, I'm not even really making much sense right now. I've just come back from work and I decided I'd make a video about vocabulary. So yeah, listen to academics talking and just absorb. I spent my whole teenage development doing this really. I was a bit of a sycophant at school, if I'm honest, and would seriously just listen to my teachers, and I'd just scribble down words I didn't understand, and even if I had spelt them completely wrong, I would be looking them up in the dictionary later trying to find the word that I thought my teacher had used and that sort of thing. But I think if you are genuinely curious about the English language, you will have absolutely no problem in improving your vocabulary. But the main things to do are read widely and voraciously, read quality literature, the classics, the Brontes, Charles Dickens, Wilkie Collins. Victorian writers are extremely adept with their language, and you simply cannot go wrong really with reading the Victorians. I would also recommend the modernist writers, James Joyce, Virginia Woolf. Obviously it depends on what you're interested in, but not every novel is going to be a pleasure, and a lot of these things we have to read for study anyway. I would also recommend reading poetry, which is either if you're studying literature, you're going to have to do that anyway. But I think reading poetry really offers an interesting insight into poetic use of language and the way language can be manipulated for creative purposes, really. There are more than one kind of interpretations for a word, and a word in a certain context can mean many different things. But yeah, I think that's all I'm going to say on the topic of vocabulary for now. I hope I've been clear enough. I am tired, and I really don't think I did my vocabulary any justice in this video, but never mind. So if you want any more academic advice, just you can find me on my website, where I've been offering quite a lot of academic advice already. So just hit me up if you're interested, and I hope you're all doing very well, and I'll see you all soon. Bye!